We're returning to our friend David Vladimir Rubin. So David Rubin has this show called Actual Friends where he does a podcast with a few other extremely bottom of the barrel grifters. Jillian Michaels, who I don't know if she is back from the optometrist or if she's experimenting with some mind-altering substances. But then we have Mr. Drew, who is an extremely discredited pseudo-professional, and then David Vladimir Rubin. So they do a podcast called Actual Friends. They also have Sage Steele, if she hasn't gotten kicked off yet. She's just totally empty shell of a grifter. And then they used to have Russell Brand, but he is currently on trial for very, very serious accusations and allegations against him in the UK. So he had to drop off the podcast. I love the Dave Rubin blank face. But we're going to just see, this is a kind of long clip. I don't know if we'll have the time to watch the whole thing. But they're talking about Hasan Piker and others who recently went to Cuba to bring attention and aid to Cuba, which has been throttled by U.S. sanctions. And the U.S. is not even allowing gasoline to be imported to Cuba. And we've been completely... it seems like state terrorism. Like, I don't know how it's legal for a country to prevent another country from importing gasoline, but we're responsible for an enormous amount of suffering in Cuba, including people who obviously need energy to stay alive on various machines that they might be dependent on, dialysis machines and elsewhere. But, the way that the U.S. Is there an ad? Whoa, they're doing ads in their clips for, collagen pills? They're just doing ads in their clips? Wow. Yikes, business is not booming. Flush out toxins and get up to 50% off. But then it's a different website link? This is Native Path. Sorry, I shouldn't say the name for free. But then the link is to try Ultra Liver. Is that the same thing? It looks like a completely different website and different thing to what they're advertising in the clip. Remember when Actual Friends had the clip about Zoran Mamdani being a threat to Jews in New York, and then they didn't mention Jews in the entire clip? That was awesome. Yeah, so they're very interesting. There is very interesting broadcast. So let's just see what they say about this trip that Hasan and some other folks took. I'm not a Hasan viewer, but I do certainly support bringing attention and aid to a country that has been wrongfully sanctioned and abused by my country for so long. It doesn't even have to be a capitalism versus communism thing. It's just an imperialism thing. So I will say they definitely got Hasan with this. Calling Hasan a liberal is the most insulting thing that you can call him. I don't think they mean it in that way. But that is, they definitely got his ass with that one. So let's see what the Actual Friends have to say about this trip to Cuba. Let's check it out.
This might be the best internet on the freaking island.
Okay, so that is the stinger. The cold open is just Hasan saying that he has the best internet on the island. So that kind of cues up what we can expect, which is, haha, you say you care about people living in poverty, and yet you yourself do not live in poverty. Explain that one, Hasan. Let's see. Which is so funny when people take that line of argument, because it's basically like them saying they don't have empathy and they could only understand someone's struggle if they were going through it themselves. But let's see.
Let's jump over to Cuba, because you guys know I'm here in Miami. I'm surrounded by Cubans. One of the things that I love about Miami is that there are so many Cubans. They love...
Okay. So he likes living around migrants, is what he's saying. That's cool.
Of America. They also just have a fun way of life, and there's just a certain joy in them, and they get what's right about freedom and all of these things. So you...
Okay.
You guys know already that a couple of days ago, this sort of crazy clown car collection of left-wing influencers, highlighted by this lunatic Hasan Piker.
Drew, what is going on with your eyebrows? Are those eyebrows, or is his face just indented like that?
Who I used to work with at the Young Turks. He was Cenk's. Yeah, he was Cenk's nephew. He is an.
He still is, actually. Funny thing about that, he still is.
Unbearably terrible.
My God, he
is
Cenk.
You didn't know
Yes.
Julian Michaels. Okay.
Yes, he's Cenk's
yeah.
nephew and
Just so effacing about it.
got the job and then immediately leapfrogged over all these people who had been working there. Everyone hated him. He was harassing all the girls, so they made him work from home.
I don't know any of these allegations, and I like I said, I'm not a Hasan viewer, so I don't know what. That's pretty serious to just throw that around. I've never even heard that.
Used to bring
Oh my
his pit
God.
bull to our Sunday basketball game and tie it up to a tree, and it wrecked the whole grass at the
Wow, really petty things to take issue with.
school we played
Wow.
at. He also
Oh,
electrocuted his dog
my
on a live stream. The
God.
guy's
I've heard those claims, and I actually haven't looked into it, but yeah, I know that people say he did electrocute his dog or he didn't. I don't. I honestly don't know. I don't think it's good to do that with dogs, but I didn't look deeply into it. I started looking into it, and then people were like, "Oh, it's actually not a shock collar. Oh, it is a shock collar." I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know if you need to necessarily hinge your all your thoughts on a detailed analysis of whether a collar is a shock collar or not. It's something that would obviously inform your perspective on someone, but it doesn't have to necessarily determine it single-handedly.
he's just terrible. Anyway, he led this crusading band of leftist
did
whack
not know he
jobs,
was
including
Cenk's
Code
nephew.
Pink. They went to Cuba, and here he is talking about it while he was in Cuba at basically the only hotel that had electricity.
Why does Dave want to address why Cuba does not have electricity? He would say, "Oh, it's just poor communist governance." It's yeah, that's not really it, though, is it? I mean, we've been sanctioning and not allowing Cuba to engage in trade, on various levels for months, for years, and decades. But certainly for several months, we haven't allowed fuel to enter Cuba. So you could just look it up to Cuba's public sector. So we've been allowing fuel to go to. So no fuel has entered Cuba in 3 months. I wonder if that's because of communism.
But this level of internet is unbelievably good in comparison to being out and about. This is this might be the best internet on the freaking island. Let's be real. Yeah, very productive. Because I did see Vic Mensa for.
Doesn't that prove the point further? If he has bad internet and it's the best internet on the island, doesn't that? Okay, I'm really curious what point Dave is going to make here.
A brief moment. What he's doing, remember the flotilla transporting humanitarian aid, Cuba dancing, singing during the voicing the ship Guru Paramount 2.0, which carries 30
It's kind of beautiful, the glitching.
visions of
But
photovoltaic
this is not the image segment.
panels.
Yeah.
Can't hear anything you're saying. Wait, what? What do you mean? So when the stream drop off happens,
I don't know who these guys are that are watching him. It's
you can't hear what I'm saying?
So that was not an error, an internet problem on our end. That was the internet literally breaking down while he was live streaming. They've been having rolling blackouts for months. And
yeah, why do you think that is, Dave? And wait, that proves Hasan's point even further about Cuba being persecuted, that he has the best internet and he has terrible internet. People don't even have lights on. People don't have the ability to power their necessary machines to live life.
these people who are LARPing communists this guy's making, I mean, we tried to figure out the exact numbers. He's probably making 400,000+ a month on Twitch, at least. God knows how many other millions he's making.
That's just a non sequitur. I mean, all the more reason for someone, like, for it to be admirable for someone to bring attention to people living in poverty. How is that hypocritical? To be a very, very rich person and to be bringing attention and care to people who live in poverty.
So reaping all the rewards of capitalism while trying to destroy it. And
all the better. That's better than reaping the rewards and not trying to destroy it, Dave. Some people care about more than just money. I mean, I think Hasan cares about money more than I do, seemingly. But I've never really had that much money, so I would probably flaunt it to a certain extent. But he still seems to care about money, like, more than I do. And I've seen him flaunting, like, luxury things that I was like, okay, that's a bad look, Hasan. But like, all the more reason, like, he does actually support causes that affect people living in poverty. Like, he actually cares about people living in poverty. And certainly this trip to Cuba is not just to raise his profile. It's to bring actual attention and aid to people living in Cuba. We're at a very critical time. So the idea that you can point out hypocrisy and as if that's significantly meaningful, it's not, because there's no hypocrisy. He's saying, I want everyone to be able to not live in poverty. The fact that he himself is extremely wealthy it's a non sequitur. If there were times where he showed that he wanted people to live in poverty, and then he said he didn't want people to live in poverty, that would be hypocritical. But himself not living in poverty is not hypocritical to him wanting other people to not live in poverty.
And usher in communism. He also went on to talk about how, it's just so great. These people are just partying outdoors in the nice weather. They've just adjusted to this lifestyle. I mean, Drew, it was so backwards on.
I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that people do adjust and adapt and have resilience. And at the same time, you don't want to glamorize and glorify that resilience. It's really, you don't want to valorize it. It's really a sad thing that people have to have resilience when they're being persecuted by an imperial power. But they do. And it is beautiful to highlight at the same time. But I'm just pretty confused because, like, Hasan's internet messing up was the point of this clip, but that's, like, supporting Hasan's point. Why would you highlight the part where his internet messes up? That messes with the hypocrisy point. But also, like, that's supposed to make him look bad that his internet messed up? Dave, how does that make him look bad that his internet messed up? It shows he's willing to go into difficult situations to broadcast the situation that Cubans are in.
Every front. They painted murals for the people. They brought them some candy. I mean, it's everything everyone hates about the left wrapped up in one.
Dave, your kids are going to hate you when they grow up, dude. You just have disgusting positions on things.
Cuban package.
I was in Cuba twice, and you have to kind of know what you're looking at. You got to... I was not just in Havana, I was also in Cienfuegos. And
was this before or after you were completely discredited for terribly running a show about addiction?
Havana puts a certain thing forward, which is their music and their dancing in the streets, and they've got their old cars that you can't get near, because if you get near, I'm going to charge you. I'm going to charge you for looking at it and for taking a picture with it. They are government, those old cars.
That just sounds like any tourist, like, situation. Dave's like Dave's face, like, sure, he could just be listening, but he really sometimes looks like so bored and like he's not listening at all, and he like forgets to even pretend he's listening briefly.
Did you hear about? Those are government run propaganda cars. Did you know that?
Government run propaganda cars? Drew, like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, I'm sure that's a real thing he's talking about, but, like, what are you talking? Like, how is that relevant? The government wants you to see these really fancy cars, but those are just run by the government. Those are not actual, like, just cars that exist in the world. Yeah, I think the main problem is the lack of fuel, actually, because our country has been not allowing people in Cuba. I mean, look, I'm obviously left-wing. I allow for debate about capitalism and communism. Like, we're always going to debate this stuff. We're never going to come to an agreement on it. We're always going to have some debate where there are serious fundamental differences in people's perspectives on how government should work. And that's fine. That's fine. People can think it's wrong for the government to nationalize various things. or for certain government services, people can pretend that like private industry provides for people better than the government and so on. But like at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to look at the situation and say the U.S. is not putting its entire elbow on the scale. You know what I mean? Like can we stop persecuting these countries like Cuba and sanctioning them to hell and let them try to live and then make our assessment of which political economy structure is most effective?
I did.
I
Yeah.
did know that. I did, yeah.
So
You did know that, Jillian Michaels. You knew that the cars in Havana are actually government cars. Okay.
they're not that
Wow.
they only have the old cars because they can't get parts. That's the only cars they have for the most part. But those old restored cars are for tourist purposes only, and you charge to get around them. But
So these people, they want the Batista regime back. They're like, that was freedom.
it's broken down. It looks like Atlantis falling into the sea. And the people are so brainwashed and so completely bought in, such true believers. They just, as the line from Fiddler on the Roof went, they're so happy they don't know how miserable they are. And they present that, and people get persuaded by it. Look, they're having a great time. This is great. And they have nowhere to live. They have nothing to support them.
So far, we have not mentioned the U.S. sanctioning Cuba, and we have not mentioned the U.S. not allowing fuel to enter Cuba for 3 months. Let me just make sure I got that right. Why has fuel not entered Cuba for 3 months? Stringent U.S. pressure campaign that has effectively blocked fuel shipments from allies like Venezuela and Mexico. Right. It's since we invaded Venezuela and deposed their leader. Right. Literally, we've not allowed Cuba's primary supplier of oil. So if you think, so they haven't even mentioned it. So you can just take it for granted that they believe that one country has the right to prevent another country from importing oil to a third country. Unbelievable. That is what imperialism is.
They're just living in this weird sort of fantasy about the revolution, and they're living their best life because look at how great.
Speaking of living their best life, what is going on with Jillian? Like, what is going on? Why a surf naked hat, dark sunglasses in front of like a graffiti art background? Like, what's going on, girl? Like, what's this vibe? Like, the sunglasses are a crazy vibe right now, Jillian. What's going on?
This country is and what we do here, and they're doing nothing. They're just falling
At the end, Jillian goes, I'm actually part of the flotilla. I'm in Cuba.
apart. And, do you know they've been through a previous time like this? I was talking to someone about it who moved from Cuba as a kid. And they called the last episode like this, where they were put on restriction,
Put on restriction.
the special time.
So that's the closest we've gotten to anyone pointing out that the U.S. has not allowed Cuba's main trader of oil to import oil to Cuba. Put on restriction.
That was the
But we're more just talking about how Cubans are adapting to it. We're not even addressing what's going on.
special time. And we all got
And it's like completely reasonable for people like Hasan and U.S. citizens or U.S. residents, U.S. taxpayers to take issue with our country acting in this way towards Cuba,
through the special
let alone towards Venezuela too, obviously. Extracting the leader of a foreign country as if that's legal.
time by getting together. And I watch people, Americans, get persuaded by this stuff. It is a kind of brainwashing that Americans can be.
Is that really all they're going to show of Hasan? Oh my God. They then go to the commercial and then they come back. Are they seriously? That's all they showed was him having internet issues, as if like that's their point. But that proves more of the point of how bad it is in Cuba, that even the rich streamer can't get good internet. Do they not realize how that proves the opposite of their point?
Disconnect
I wanna
between
launch into
these.
this one.
Yeah. Well, just
Yeah,
the
I wanna
disconnect between these
sink right deep in there.
rich influencers who
Yeah.
will just go for this like perverse tourism as if they were on a safari.
He's sitting in a hotel broadcasting about the political situation in Cuba.
Versus
know.
when I talk to all of my guys that I play basketball every week, it's probably like, I'd say like 15 out of the 25 guys are Cuban.
Okay, so there's what's called the selection effect. You're looking at Cuban expats. So that's obviously a selection effect that would bias the results significantly. Also, even if all those people were not biased and they thought it was really great that the U.S. is not allowing fuel to be imported to Cuba, that doesn't mean that Hasan is doing anything wrong by going and expressing his free speech to support the people of Cuba and take issue with our government's treatment of them.
And when they tell me the stories, or just in the last few weeks, as Trump has said, we're going to do Cuba next, and they're so freaking excited because, they might have a grandmother there, or they had to.
So by this logic, Dave is saying like one country has the right to completely manipulate the politics of another country. So he would support if any country did that to the United States, if China deposed, U.S. presidents and arrested them and brought them to China and then prevented fuel from being imported to the U.S. from other countries. I mean, or they're just saying might equals right.
Or
I should say.
Live through some god awful thing versus this guy, he's got internet, he'll be okay.
But you showed him having internet problems.
Okay, two things that we have yet to mention.
Yeah, because God forbid we actually have a conversation and speak to a single point repeatedly.
One, that was Code Pink that took everybody down there. Code Pink is run by Jody Evans, who is the wife of Neville Roy Singham, who is the billionaire connected to the CCP. Period.
Perfect.
End of story. There is a huge expose on this done by the New York Times in 2023.
Okay. So that's what's called an ad hominem. I mean, it's like no one's even mentioned that the U.S. is not allowing fuel to be imported to Cuba. That's all they need for these types of reactionary media. They just need to avoid the point.
So
their viewers are stupid as fuck. I mean,
what these dumbasses.
And he's been funding all the Hamas rallies for the last year.
Yes. And by the way,
all the Hamas rallies? I mean, I would bet Dave has taken significant money from Israel like he did from Russia. But obviously, like, anti-Israel protests are not Hamas rallies, dude. And also, a lot of it is anti-U.S. support of Israel. Like, it's important for people to protest our government supporting an ethno-state genociding an indigenous population. Doesn't mean we're necessarily supporting all the actions of the resistance group that's, violently, resisting the genocide of that same indigenous population.
His niece, I just covered this one, his niece, Alicia Singham Goodwin, is the one who runs Jews for Mamdani in New York, and that bitch is not Jewish.
Okay, well, I'm Jewish, and I think, like, it's totally reasonable to support Mamdani. So what now? Who cares?
He is evil.
She's got a mouth on her, too.
To the core. Anna Paulina Luna is actually trying to get him brought up on criminal charges under FARA.
Girl, what the fuck are you talking about? These are like, she's got like a Charlie Day like tree on her whiteboard. It's like, okay, like none of that has any relevance to it. You're just doing an ad hominem. Okay, Code Pink is funded by a Chinese billionaire communist. Okay. Let's say that's true. How does that justify the U.S. treatment of Cuba? And how does that make there be anything wrong with a live streamer going to Cuba who's rich, bringing attention to the poverty in Cuba?
And
it's funny because they're sort of saying like, well, Cubans don't like what's going on, but also they're brainwashed, so they do like what's going on, but they don't actually like what's going on until they leave Cuba, and then they realize that it's really, really bad what was going on, but those people are not brainwashed. The people within Cuba are brainwashed. And I guess they're just leaving aside the question of what's going on, right? That's sort of the reactionary thing. You just talk about reactions to what's going on.
they are the ones that downplay all of China's human rights atrocities, like,
Of course.
I don't know, harvesting organs from political prisoners.
Okay, it's entirely possible China does that. It's also entirely irrelevant to this question of how the United States is acting towards Cuba and whether influencers should be speaking up about it.
Or genociding your minority Muslim community, the Uyghur community.
Jillian, your country, you should take issue with what your country is doing also, though. Your country, our country, is murdering people in Iran, supporting the murder of people in Lebanon, in Palestine. In the United States itself, more people are dying in ICE custody than ever before. Like, our country has a lot of issues, Jillian. So I don't know, like, if you want to ignore those necessarily when you're talking about China.
So as you downplay all of this evil that China does, and you go out on Singham's dime to Cuba to promote communism.
Or is it to bring attention to the way our country has not been allowing fuel to be imported to Cuba for 3 months?
That is a completely separate level of evil. That is not just poverty safari tourism. You're either absolutely brain dead or absolutely evil.
Is it possible people in good faith disagree with you, Jillian? Or they have to be brain dead or evil? I know you are a very respected political commentator with a long history of, significant work in the field. And you didn't just rise to fame on some reality show about people losing weight or something and fat shaming people, but you might not really know what you're talking about here.
And then one other thing I want to tell you about good old Hasan. Maybe you probably know this.
Maybe it's relevant. Maybe it's a relevant point. Okay, she's getting closer to the point.
But I just wrote a piece for the Daily Mail. It hasn't come out yet about how deep and dark Mamdani's radical circle is. You know that Hasan was his megaphone to help him get elected.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's one way to put it. I mean, he's a popular left-wing streamer and he's supported Mamdani. But yeah, tell us more about Hasan. You didn't even know he was Cenk's nephew, but tell us more about him.
And this is the guy that said he doesn't care if women were on October 7th.
That's not what he said. I've seen the clips, and he was speaking about the mass rape story, which is not true. Obviously, some people were sexually abused, and that's horrible. But it's also really important to speak to the fact that there was actual Zionist propaganda about mass rape taking place that I have not seen credible evidence of it. It's only been people wanting to delegitimize the pro-Palestinian movement by saying that Hamas fighters were engaged in mass rape. And I have not seen any evidence of that. And I believe the clip of Hasan that goes around, he's saying is it doesn't matter if rape happened in the sense of that does not delegitimize the pro-Palestinian movement. Maybe he should have obviously phrased it differently. It does matter if rape happens, but also the evidence showed that there was not mass rape taking place. And so obviously it was not anything that would delegitimize the pro-Palestinian movement. I mean, if there was mass rape taking place by Hamas resistance fighters, I don't even really think that would delegitimize the pro-Palestinian movement at all, but it would certainly mean more than isolated sexual assault taking place that was not systematic or mass in any way, as far as my current understanding is. But again, the point is that Israel has been committing a genocide and violating people's human rights. And so even if the victims of that or the terrorists who are also victims of that engaged in their own human rights violations, that would not have any bearing on the actions of the Zionist ethnic state. That's my take, at least.
He said America deserved 9/11.
I mean, yeah, that's a pretty inflammatory thing to say, but I'm one to always say deserve is a really strong word, and at the same time, it is worth looking at, why has America been able to murder hundreds of thousands of people all over the world with impunity and not expect attacks from people related to those victims? You know, do you think terrorists are just born that way? Like, I mean, you can go look at like the reasoning behind the terrorists for 9/11. And it's not like you're going to agree with them, but you'll be like, okay, I see that the United States is doing bad things abroad. You know, like maybe we don't need to have military bases in all these countries and put like, you know, tens of thousands of soldiers in all these different countries and so on. It doesn't mean we deserve 9/11. It's just like, it's understandable to expect terrorist attacks when we are engaging in state level terrorism. But yeah, Hasan Piker's a live streamer. He's going to say inflammatory things like that sometimes. But yeah, deserve is not a useful word for that point.
Yes, Dave. Dark, 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 evil shit. So as much as I want to make fun of these morons, unfortunately, this is way, way deeper and way, way darker. And people need to be really savvy about what they're dealing with.
It would have probably been good to mention that the United States has not allowed fuel to be imported to the country they were talking about for 3 months. But there you go. A clip of Hasan Piker having poor internet apparently proves their point. Somehow. This is a podcast